now we understand why do we have to analyze signals in the frequency domain. Next, we're going to introduce the Fourier representation of continuous time signals. For continuous time signals, for convenience, we're going to start from periodic signals, and then we're going to extend our analysis to non-periodic continuous time signals. First is how we can use Fourier series to represent any periodic continuous time signal. This is rather to refresh your memory of Fourier series you guys learned in calculus. So for a periodic signal, show example over there, we can use sinusoidal signals to approximate it. If I allow you to use only one sinusoidal signal to represent the periodic signal, then you're probably going to use a sinusoidal signal with the same period to approximate it, but we can see the errors rather large. So if I allow you to use extra sinusoidal signals to approximate the original one, then you probably can find this is the best second sinusoidal signal to represent the original one. If I allow you to use more sinusoidal signals, we can keep doing this, so on and so forth. And in the end, the summation of these sinusoidal signals can approximate the original signal very well. So mathematically, we can use this summation of sinusoidal signals to represent the original periodic signal. And the frequency of the sinusoidal signal must satisfy certain conditions. So this was proposed first by Fourier. So in his study of heat conduction equation, he proposed that almost all functions can be represented by the summation of sinusoidal signals. So that Fourier series named after him. And for any continuous time periodic signals, we show here is one example. We can show it in the time domain. We show the waveform here. Alternatively, we may show the same signal by displaying all the sinusoidal components of that signal in the so-called another frequency domain. So mathematically, we can, using this method, to do the signal decomposition. And based on the Euler equation, we know that for any sinusoidal signals, it can be converted to imaginary exponential signals like that. So the Fourier series for continuous time periodic signals can be represented in this more compact form. So this is defined as continuous time Fourier series, or CTFS in short. And the explanation of this equation actually is any signal, periodic signal, subject to certain conditions, can be decomposed as a linear combination of a series of imaginary exponential signals. And in this equation, omega sub none is related to the period, the fundamental period of the original signal in the time domain. And here, C sub n is the coefficient. It is actually a function of n times omega sub none. But usually, we only use C sub n to represent that signal. Please remember, this signal is a function of n times omega sub none. And this is so-called the basis. And this imaginary exponential signal is a unique basis for signal decomposition. Not every single periodic continuous time signal has Fourier transform. Direct conditions are sufficient conditions for the existence of continuous time Fourier series. So they contain three different criteria. First, the original periodic signal must be absolutely integrable over a period. So here is the definition. And the second criterion actually is the original signal must have a finite number of finite discontinuities. And the third one is that original signal in the time domain must have a finite number of extrema. So these three criteria collectively called the rigged conditions. They are sufficient conditions, meaning if a periodic continuous time signal satisfies the conditions, then there must be a continuous time Fourier series. But even if these conditions are not all satisfied, there may be a continuous time Fourier series for a given periodic signal. We have this Fourier series. This is the signal decomposition, and we know this is the coefficient of the continuous time Fourier series. But how can we calculate the coefficient in here? Based on the orthogonality, because the imaginary exponential signals, they are a complete set of orthogonal signals. So they satisfy this condition. And based on this condition, I'm not going through the details, the coefficients of the continuous time Fourier series can be calculated in this format. So this is how we can evaluate the Fourier series of any given continuous time periodic signal. Thank you.